recording.
All right. So, good morning, everybody. It's good to have you again. Well, this is our second day of our third week in this seminar. So, I've been keeping track of the assignments that we left. Just a friendly reminder, do not leave anything for the last minute. Probably you could catch up during this week or during the coming weeks, because as you know, there's going to be a break, longer break coming up. Nevertheless, it's necessary for all of us to do as much as we can as to help me justify grading for the certificate program. So whatever it is that you have left pending, namely in this case, I'm referring to the segmentation work. Please make sure you forward that to my email. That's okay if you send it to my email, it's all right. Or if you want to send it over in classroom, that's also okay. Today, we're going to do something a little different. Today, I'm going to start developing with you a couple of assignments from our book, one of the books that I have added, named Estrategias de Traducción, Translation Strategies. This is the one by Brinton Cruz Ortiz and White. It's a very good book. Probably you've seen it. I don't know. Maybe you haven't. It's been out there, for a while, but it's a very, very good resource. And my intention is for us to do several of these activities that we're going to do next in a few minutes. I want you to take care of at least sections 1, 2, and 3, not completely, of course, but you will select a number of exercises from those 3 sections. The first section has to do with, as I was saying yesterday, with short texts, which are fairly common. The second one is longer text, and the last one that we're going to be dealing with is literary translation. There is also, of course, technical translation chapters and all the other appendixes with information that I think is very useful. My intention is that you inherit this book from this certificate program so that you can become a better translator by yourself, because this is like self-training, really. If you have checked the material, it's more like self-training. Whoever works the whole book, I think, is going to become a much better translator of the English, Spanish, Spanish-English pairs. And if you're a teacher, it's a very good idea that you use this with your students if you are ever to teach translation classes, right? Either at the department or maybe some other university that teaches these kinds of courses, maybe a private one, maybe a public one, who knows? But it's a very good thing that you guys get access to something like this, because this kind of books are kind of scarce. I was checking in Amazon recently, and I realized that there is another very, very good book from a Spanish language professor who's an American. And but his book is pretty expensive. I think softcover version was around $80 or so, and there was also a hardcover one that was over $100, $150 or so. So yes, these kinds of books that train translators, these are not very easy to come by. So this is one of the few that there are out there, which is we don't have to pay a dime for it, so to say. So I strongly suggest you pass it on, because it's a very good resource for translation work. And really, there isn't a place in our country where you could tell they are going to train you to become a translator. It's so hard, okay? It's hard to get a place where you will train yourself to become a translator. So these kinds of resources are fairly useful. I must say this. So, all right. Let me just share with you. Okay, I'm gonna turn off my camera so pay attention to. Okay, let me just see if I may get rid of all this. Hopefully it's visible. See? Okay. Okay, I extracted from that book the title because I want to, to familiarize you with this work because this is coming up. This is going to be part of a second assessment that we'll do. And there's going to be a capstone project. This capstone project will also involve materials from here. So don't forget it's Brinton, Cruz, Ortiz, and White. So you could very well download it. Yeah, right. You should have already and have it, in your repertoire of resources. Okay, so this is officially the name. Okay, if you look at the book, I just, took a snapshot from the book material. So it's an older material, kind of material. So I could not do it any other way. So that's why you see it's just a photo, right? So I hope it's clear. The parts I was referring to are short passages for translation that begins on page number 3. Part 2 is longer passages for translation on page 5. And then literary translation begins. So sorry about that. No, actually is short passages for translation, page 5, longer passages for translation, page 69, and literary translation that ranges from pages 107 all the way up to 161. A technical translation, we're not going to be able to do much of that because there will be no time for that. And I think you can take care of that business on your own, depending on your interests, right? So the first section on short passages begins with Unit 1, news items, all right? And the explanation is very clear, but I'm going to go ahead and read it anyway. So let's read it together. It's very early in the morning, so our brains are fresh, and I think it's a good moment for us to start familiarizing ourselves with a dynamic because there is a dynamic that is fairly repetitive here. So these are brief news items. Do not translate word for word or even phrase by phrase. This is very good advice, okay? Remember that we go idea by idea. That's where we're going. Consider the information to be conveyed, right? Then write each sentence of your translation so as to communicate the meaning most clearly in the language you're translating into. This will often mean rephrasing the original sentence. So they suggest you to go for the message more than anything. And of course, preserve sentence level organization. But the idea is to rephrase it to some extent, right? So when you have finished your translation, read it through as an original news item without referring to the first language. Is the meaning clear? Finally, reread the original. Make sure all the information is clearly conveyed in your version. So this is some general advice on how to proceed with this material. So this is the very first reading short piece of news, right, that we have to translate and work on. So as you know, this is a 1981 book. So there's this passage which is curiously, it's about Panama. It's about Panama. So you read, we have to work on it, right? Something that relates to our context. Not in the present, in the past, of course, but it's a Panamanian story. So, chocan estudiantes con la Guardia Nacional Panameña en Colón. Okay. So we read, automóviles particulares quemados, patrulleros apedreados y ventanas de edificios públicos rotas. Rotas, es rotos, I think. Fue el saldo de un enfrentamiento ocurrido hoy entre estudiantes y efectivos de la Guardia Nacional en la ciudad de Colón, se informó aquí. Efectivos del ejército lanzaron gases lacrimógenos para dispersar a unos 50 jóvenes. Fuentes gubernamentales señalaron después que elementos ajenos al movimiento estudiantil originaron los desórdenes en la ciudad, según el Ministerio de Educación. Los planteamientos estudiantiles, debe ser planteamientos, se centran en dos aspectos: la situación socioeconómica de Colón y reivindicaciones educativas. Adapted from the Excelsior. That's the source. So you see, I ran into a couple of typos, probably out of the original. There were typos already there. So it's always a good idea for us to go ahead and read and see if we understand everything. And if everything is well spelled out or fairly written, the right way, or at least the best possible way. Okay, this one comes from Spanish into English. It's a challenging one because we'll be translating into an our L2, right? In most of our cases, this is our L2. So we have instructions. Read the passage carefully to answer the following questions in English. What was the outcome of the clash between students and police? Who was officially blamed for the outbreak? 3. What is meant by reivindicaciones in this context? That's our first part. Now, second is mark the following translations, 1, 2, or 3 in order of your preference in the context. Mark X, any you consider unacceptable. Give a better version if one occurs to you. Okay, we have a first word there, saldo, and then you get different options, right? That's a part of a second section. We have a couple more here, right? We have to proceed to go ahead and pick the best choice. Lanzaron gases lacrimógenos, elementos ajenos, se centran en dos aspectos, reivindicaciones educativas. Once we solve all of this, we're going to proceed to do some site translation, right? We're going to do site translation because for the sake of saving some time. Okay, so let's get started by checking the questions, see if we could answer these questions. We have 3 questions for part 1 that we should, right, go ahead and pay attention and see if we could answer this. Okay, I'm going to allow you a couple of minutes to take your time, and then we're going to begin working out part 1, then part 2, and part 3. So, what was the outcome of the clash between students and police? And by the way, who was officially blamed for the outbreak? Last but not least, what is meant by reivindicaciones?
Reivindicaciones would be like demands.
Okay.
Or claims.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
However, what about the information questions? Thank you, Katia. Thank you very much, Professor. So what I would like is for you to attempt to provide some of, the information on 1 and 2 because I think it's key, right?
Yes. Well, according the context says that the of who officially who's officially blamed are the students, the who they suppose were not part of this movement.
So the outcome of the clash between students and police, it refers to what was the consequences. So what was reported in this short piece of text. So something was reported. What was reported occurred. So what was the outcome?
Well, according to the news, the government reported after the event that outsiders were mixed with the students' actions, so they didn't blame students at the end.
No, but there were some outcomes, and there actually one, two, three.
Mhm.
There are three of them,
Mhm.
and please tell me what those are. It's right here in front of us. Let me
Yes,
know,
burned
please.
cars that were burned. Yes,
Yeah,
policemen that were also
yeah, burned cars,
Burned
stoned,
police
stone
homes,
police officers, we could say, or
broken
police force, and broken,
windows.
glass windows. Exactly. All right. That's the outcome. Exactly. And the outcome would, I think would translate as a saldo. That's what it's referred to as saldo, I think. So that's
Yes.
yeah, that answers our part two. I
Mhm.
think number one from part two,
for
because they
saldo
offer
to
you the
be
word saldo over there. To me, is outcome. I don't know. We're gonna solve this
outcomes.
together here.
That's what
So
I
we'll see.
found. Outcomes.
There's also aftermath, but there's no aftermath here because aftermath would be like uh would be like I don't know, like some
Consequences.
consequence based on some analysis or something like that, or maybe on dealing with the numbers, something, and there is no counting over here really. So it's more like an outcome. Balance is not either a good choice here because I think balance is a very positive word rather than negative. Result is also very definitive, and there is nothing that we could say is final concerning uh, disasters like this, because this is some form of a disaster, right? So let's take a look. And the second question is, who was officially blamed for the outbreak?
External elements
Good.
to the
This is, yeah,
students,
to me,
to the
that's, yeah, very
student.
good. Now, this term, movimiento estudiantil, it's a very good one to translate or attempt to translate. I don't know if you could refer to that as students. Well, how would you translate movimiento estudiantil?
Student movement.
Yeah, but that's literal. And generally, in general terms, I think literal is not it's a big no-no. To me, it's more like the student unions or student organizations or something like that, of that sort. Because I think movement could mean that, but literal is always like not always a first choice, right? So yeah, think it over. Okay, so in reply to number two, officially, outbreak culprits were students unions or student organizations. Okay. What about the third one? What is meant by reivindicaciones in this context? So, okay, Professor Quintero attempted to do that, and she's referred to, what was that, Professor Quintero again?
Demands, Professor,
Demands, right? Demands or claims also. Okay. Demands or claims. Okay, good. Right, let's move on. Let's try to move on to more vocabulary here. Now, lanzaron gases lacrimógenos. What would be your choice?
Through tear gases.
Yeah, that's more descriptive. I agree with you. Why not hurl tear gas? Because to me, hurl tear gas is possible too, but it's not as common, I think. And remember, we have to sound natural every time. So the more natural, the better our selection is. So definitely through tear gas. What about elementos ajenos?
Could be persons outside, which is
And
more
why did
descriptive.
you select that one? Why did you pick persons
Elementos
out?
ajenos. Okay, what I'm taking into account is that foreign elements can be disguising, and it can be interpreted wrongly. Strange individuals is strange in what sense? But persons outside the student movement, the students' organizations, the students, as you mentioned, the word, what was that for sindicatos? Union could be, I think, more accurate for the situation itself contextually.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Agreed. Agreed. So what about se centran en dos aspectos?
I think more naturally says focus on.
Absolutely. Very good. Very good. Exactly. This is the good thing about this kinds of materials, is that they're here to help us out develop criteria. Yeah, and as I told you before, everything that's too literal is usually not the first choice. It's not our first choice because too literal is word for word translation and even phrase by phrase. And as we were suggested at the beginning of this section of the book, the idea is to go for the more natural sounding options that allow flexibility for you to integrate. Because remember that this is like plugging pieces. Okay, since you're dealing with idea from idea, we're plugging pieces, not not like getting like piece by piece, but larger pieces that we are. It's like in a metaphoric way to put it that way. So focus on is much more flexible for you to proceed and say focus on two main aspects, on two major aspects, on two essential aspects, or two essential elements, or something like that. So we could go ahead and turn trouble because se centran en dos aspectos. This is cumbersome writing, very intricate. So you want to facilitate and make it as easy as you can, preserve meaning. So focus on and then you proceed. So you get out of a straight jacket, right? So reivindicaciones educativas. How about that?
Could be educational reforms.
Educational reforms, that has to do with I don't know. You explain to me why you say reforms is a good choice. Why do you think it is a good choice?
No, just I thinking because of maybe it's based on I mean, it's focused on the change that they already did in that moment. But educational claims could be an option too, but I think it's less contextual, but just an idea.
Yeah, the word reivindicaciones, we have to pay attention to two levels of meaning concerning this word. There's a denotative and the connotative meaning. Okay. Denotative level to me, if you ask me without checking a dictionary, because I'm telling you here on site translation, yeah, of course, it has to do with change in favor of, or obtaining benefits to some extent. However, there is also a connotation. The connotation is, I think, it's like some kind of a demand that hasn't been met, or some kind of a need that hasn't been met, right? So to me, claims rather than vindications or reforms is a better choice. Why is that? Because vindications probably is too much, and then reforms probably is something that has to go on paper, not necessarily benefits. So to me, a claim is more like getting what you need, or what hasn't been, you know, tended to, or seen by any authority, or because the thing is, if this is coming from the bottom up, that's like from the people to the authorities, it's more of a claim than anything. I don't know if you see eye to eye with me on this. Let me
Well,
know if you disagree.
for that one, the choice is not there, but instead of claims, I will use demands. For me, demands there sounds more natural, educational demands instead of claims. I don't know. That's my idea.
Yeah, if we think in terms of reivindicaciones, generally we associate it with an economic factor, right? It's like that has to do with probably benefits. That's money. That's what they're talking about here, if you ask me. I don't know if you see the same thing, or not. Let me know if you have a different viewpoint. Every viewpoint is valid here. Remember that we're doing this together.
Yes, I agree. Also, because if we use reforms is something that also, if you use this word, is because the situation with the students has been going on before, so they're asking for some kind of reforms that was said before in that situation happened. I don't know, because it's very specific. But claims is much more general, could be anything, right? But reforms is much more like something that could happen, or they already had made some kind of document asking for a specific or some kind of reforms, and then we can talk about that. But without that context, it's not, I think it's not appropriate.
Well, I would give here a third position in this case. I would use vindications because of the word itself. It's applicable to political issues, and I think that this is what actually refers to. Reivindicaciones educativas had turned into a political issue also, and but in the positive sense, I think, because they are claiming. Or demanding both, I think that implies some kind of to do something right, which is not being done at the time. So it's more like supporting uh, a thought or a position of a political in defending their demands. So I would, because of the word vindications, that's exactly what it implies. That's my opinion.
Very good, very good. Remember, there is no good or bad translation, okay? Translation is like writing. There is always room for improvement. And there will be endless versions because, our minds are all different. So yeah, I agree with you. Vindication is also a possible choice. Excellent. Very good. So what we should do next, now that we are done with the probably the most challenging sections or passages from the piece of news, piece of text, let's proceed and translate the passage. So what I'm gonna go, do is go back. I'm gonna go back and let's give it a try. All right, it's rather short. You see, it's not even three, 4 paragraphs. It's rather, shorter than that. And let's give it a try, and let's read our translation and discuss at least 3 versions. Let's listen to at least 3 of you, and we'll discuss the differences. And this exchanges are very useful, very insightful as also. Okay, let's give it a couple of minutes for each one of us, but let's try to sit down with paper and pen and try to write it out. Let's take a couple of minutes for this one. The discussion is going to be highly enriching.
Professor, sorry, are you sharing what you are going, or I cannot see anything. I don't know. Well, I cannot see anything new. I don't know if it's me, only me.
I don't know. Is my screen sharing? To me, it is sharing. I don't
Yeah,
know.
it is sharing, Professor Katia.
All right.
We can see what needs to be translated.
Yeah, my concern is if probably the print is not as clear. But you do have the book, guys. The idea behind all of this, because I want you to become familiarized with the type of work that is coming up for us here, because this is like very practical application of theory. Now we're trying to, go into practical matters. That's the idea. So let's give this one a try. So Professor Katia, do you have it? Do you have it now? Is it visible
Yes,
now?
yes, thank you. Yes, thank you.
All righty, all righty. Alrighty, so okay, we have a couple of difficult words which are, as you see there, they have a number. Remember that we translators should, do our best to work fast. That's the idea, Good command of two languages, usually translates to, or people understand it as, you should, be able to at least provide some clear meaning in a short period of time. The shorter, the better. So there you have some words, especially in the title. So let's translate the title. Let's do site translation, last for the title, but let's focus on the content, the text itself. We need at least 3 versions. So who wants to go ahead and do site translation number 1?
Okay, good morning. Maybe the title could be Students Clash with Panama's National Guard in Colón.
Yeah, go on, please.
Private cars, using the passive voice, private cars were burned. Police cars or vehicles were stoned. And windows of public buildings were smashed in clashes today between students and National Guard officers in the city of Cologne. Authorities reported.
Yes, go on, please.
Maybe army personnel use tear gas or threw tear gas to disperse around 50 young people.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let me have my translation. Students clash with Panamanian National Guard in Cologne. That could be the clitoris, the title, news title. Then burn private cars, stone police patrols or vehicles could be, and public buildings broken windows was the outcome from the clash between students and National Guard in Cologne City was reported. I think that I have to rewrite this, but well, was reported. Police personnel hurled tear gases to disperse about 50 youngsters, and then governmental officers later reported that external elements to the student organization caused the city riots. According to the Ministry of Education, students based their statements or their claims could be on the social economic situation in Cologne and educational vindications.
Okay, nice. Yeah, fairly good. Fairly good. We need a third one. Thank you very much. Of course, this involves
Sure.
some level of academic effort. So the last one, please. So do we have a third one?
Yeah, let me finish the last one that I didn't mention at the beginning. Government sources later stated that outside elements unrelated to the, well, instead of a student movement, as you said before, maybe student organization, were responsible for the unrest in the city. According to the Ministry of Education, student demands focus on two main issues: Cologne's socioeconomic situation and educational claims.
Right. Thank you very much. I think we have successfully accomplished this. If there is some words that are candidates for a glossary, those would be like burnt private cars, or privately owned cars, like number 3. That definitely must go in the glossary. Also, you see that when they refer to enfrentamiento ocurrido, that's like the standoff. Was the outcome of the standoff. It's pretty much what I would probably render for enfrentamiento. When I say efectivo, oh, sorry, we have number 5. That's also a piece that we should not let get lost in translation, right? Um, as it was reported here, as it was reported here. That's the way I would put it. As it was reported here, for se informó aquí. Then we have efectivos. That's our number 6. That must definitely go in the glossary. What were you? What was your rendering for efectivos? That could be military personnel, but that could also be army ranks. Could also be, because it's efectivos del ejército. That's army ranks rather than the personnel or military personnel. To me, it's more like the ranks. Who knows? Because when
about
there is troops. Okay, that's also another possible one, of course. I definitely agree with it. So those are like the tricky ones that we have to be careful about, right? And claim and vindication. those are words that I think deserve a little bit more attention and so forth. Foreign, not foreign, but outside people outside student organization or student unions, something like that. All of those deserve attention. You see the outcome of the standoff, and so forth. Interesting, interesting. Now, this is especially challenging, as you know, because we're translating into English. We have one more. We have one more, right? We have one more. Let's take a look. Let me see if I make read myself from this control pane at the top. Yeah, no, it's not allowing me to do any of that. All right. I cannot even see my screen completely. I don't know. Do you see the screen completely?
Actually, we can.
All
Actually, we
right.
can.
Okay.
The only
Wonderful.
thing that now we can see it better.
Yeah, and now I can see it too. Okay, very good. So let's read it first of all. So, tear gas for anti-government demonstrators in Iran. Police used tear gas on thousands of anti-government demonstrators who rampaged through two southern Iranian towns in the first outbreak of violence in a month, newspapers reported on Saturday. So we have to be careful with the tenses over there, you see. Okay. So demonstrators were intercepted by police who wanted to disperse them. At first, they tried to control the mobs with water hoses, but the demonstrators began stoning the police and continued the demonstrations. So the police had to use tear gas to subdue them. Paper said two policemen, several demonstrators were injured in the clash. The news, Mexico City, adapted. So we have some questions over here. This one is right in English and we have to translate in Spanish. This in theory should be a lot easier, but it must be longer than the English version. So these are reasonable expectations here. So we have some key questions. ¿Qué hicieron los manifestantes? ¿Cuánto había durado el periodo de calma? ¿Por qué lanzó la policía gases lacrimógenos sobre las turbas de manifestantes? So it's a good idea for us to pay attention to the questions here. And then we have number 2, mark the following translations as 1, 2, or 3, in order of your preference. Two southern Iranian towns began stoning, were injured, and we should try to give 2 alternative translations to this difficult or challenging chunk. Rampage through 2 towns, right? And then do some side translation. Let's take care of this business next. Okay, let's begin with the comprehension questions. Let's take a look.
Do you want the answer for the first one?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, as it says in Spanish, los manifestantes causaron disturbios, podría ser, en dos ciudades de, del sur de Irán.
Mhm.
¿Cuánto había durado el periodo de calma? ¿Un mes?
Okay. All right. And the third
Usaron
one?
gases lacrimógenos debido a que los manifestantes tiraron piedras.
Okay. Righty. Anybody else? Thank you very much, Professor. So is there anything else you think could be added here? I think it's pretty straightforward, right? Okay. So here we go. So what would be your first choice, for instance, for 2,000 Iranian towns?
Dos poblaciones en el sur de Irán.
Okay, thank you very much. That'll be your number one. Very good. What will be your number two, Professor Quintero?
Dos pueblos iraníes sureños.
Okay,
Because the last one is just a little bit weird.
okay.
Iranians, I don't people understand Iranians. Well, Iranians in this case.
Yeah.
Well, if I say
Okay.
Iranians, I think it's much better.
Okay, how about that? Began stoning.
Eh, empezaron a apedrear.
Right. Why not lapidar? What's wrong with that?
I think it's not what is happening in reality. Because lapidar, cuando te cubren de piedras.
Right. And also it's a word that carries some probably
Yes,
some judgment or some moral involved in
it's
it.
negative. Yes, very negative. It's just
The intention of killing someone.
Yeah,
yes.
that's more like an execution. Very good. Very good. Exactly. And it's more it sounds very religious to me because it's a
Yes.
word that comes from the
The
Bible,
Mhm.
from the Gospels. Exactly. Yeah, I think that's one of the places where I've read that. Probably also in the Old Testament, but
Mhm.
it's from the Bible. It's a biblical term. Yeah. Okay. What about we're injured?
Resultaron heridos.
Yeah, I think that's fairly descriptive. Very good.
Mhm.
Okay, now comes, let me see, this rather difficult chunk, you know.
I say que causaron disturbios en dos ciudades o en dos, sí, dos poblados.
Yeah, rampage is a rather difficult word. The other day I was, not the other day, but there has been a movie with The Rock, the famous actor that is named Rampage, and I think it's a very difficult word to find like a very clear equivalent to it. Yeah. There's so many words that
Yeah,
describe
because
this.
mhm,
So you give it a
could be
try
causar,
yourselves.
aquí pudiera ser causar un estragos. It's a violent disruption, and then causaron estragos, violentaron, could be,
Very good, very good.
provocaron
Exactly.
caos.
Mhm, mhm. So
Sí,
how you phrase
For
it?
that one,
Mhm.
following the context, I mean, it's it's a piece of news. I would say la policía lanzó gases lacrimógenos contra miles de manifestantes antigubernamentales que se desataron en dos ciudades del sur de Irán.
Desataron. All right. That's
Mm.
also possible. Interesting. Choice. Very, very, very good. Okay, let's do. Yeah. Is there anybody who has a question about Rampage? I think the name of the movie is I was watching the other day. I think HBO Max or something like I don't know. It was something like Devastación, something like that. That's rampage. As a noun, that's what I recall. It's not a common word to see, but here's used as a verb, rampaged in past tense. So, is there a way to phrase this effectively? Yeah, it's rather challenging. Devastaron dos pueblos, or causaron destrozos, but that's too long. That's the problem that we don't want a Spanish version that is too long, right? So we have to be careful with that. Okay. Any comment before we go back and do some side translation? Any comment concerning this phrase? So these are the hard chunks, of a translation. Let's give it a try. Some side translation here. If we could have like, three versions at least, that would be very good. Pay special attention to those words that you have of this numbers at the top, like upper numbers, like those are like, or upper indexes, or notes over there, like 8, 9, 10, and so, because these are usually harder to deal with, like above average.
I'm gonna try, Professor, I'm gonna try.
Righty.
La policía utilizó gas lacrimógeno contra miles de manifestantes antigubernamentales, lo que provocó estragos en 2 ciudades en el sur de Irán en el primer brote de violencia en un mes, según informaron los periódicos del sábado. La policía interceptó a los manifestantes intentando dispersarlos. Al principio intentaron controlar a la multitud con agua, pero los manifestantes comenzaron a lanzar piedras a la policía y continuaron con la manifestación, por lo que tuvieron que utilizar gas lacrimógeno para sofocarlos. El periódico informó de dos policías y varios manifestantes resultaron heridos en el enfrentamiento.
Wow, that's good job, I think.
Yes, I
You
think
know,
one of
Mhm.
the thing here, Professor, well, in my opinion, it's that when to leave the passive voice and when to take out, because it was a because we had to put into action what we were talking about the passive, also the use of the passive voice in Spanish and English, because in Spanish it's a little bit weird. It's like it's not it's different from English. In English, it's much more
Yeah.
used also in the written one, in the written text, but not in Spanish. So that's why, like, the demonstrators were intercepted by the police who wanted to disperse them. In Spanish sounds like very weird. That's why I try to change a little bit into the active voice.
Actually, I think it was very effective what you did. And also consider that you could have to interpret something like this. And well, rendering message that is clear, given the little time that interpretation requires, it's rather challenging, exactly. And in general terms, we must go for active voice whenever we're moving, we're going into Spanish, as we agreed here. Very good. Okay. Do we have a second version or any? Thank you, Professor Quintero. Is there anybody else interested in providing some side translation? Correct. We don't have another option. I'd like to ask you, what about number 8? Like, police use tear gas on thousands of anti-government demonstrators. Over there, how would you deal with this troublesome preposition, like to use on? Is there any phrasing you would prefer for that one, like at the very beginning? And what about the title?
Or the
What they,
at the very beginning, la policía lanzó gases lacrimógenos contra miles de manifestantes antigubernamentales.
yeah. You see, the thing is, yeah, like lanzó, you see? Some of the people could probably say something like, la policía gaseó a miles de manifestantes. So there are different things we could say here, but this one deserves attention because the idea is not to create some gap or break over here. We really need to be careful with those ones. For example, in the title, what about it? Do you have anything you'd rather say for the title, I mean? So it's like tear gas for anti-government demonstrators in Iran.
Gases lacrimógenos contra manifestantes antigubernamentales en Irán.
Mhm. Would you say in Iran or Iraníes? No?
No, sería en Irán. It's the place.
Okay. Okay. What about number 9? Rampage through?
Causaron
It's-
alboroto o disturbio.
So yeah, of course, that's okay, but do you have something shorter?
That's difficult because in one word, doesn't sound so good.
Quienes I don't know, maybe something shorter because the problem is that we don't want to create a gap here either by adding extra words. That is the challenge here. What about number 10?
I cannot see number 10. I mean, let me see.
As you see there, we have a connector. So how will you deal with that connector appropriately? I mean, in Spanish.
Or maybe perturbaron in rampage through.
Okay, okay. Perturbaron dos pueblos
Alteraron.
iraníes. Dos pueblos alteraron. Very good. Exactly. We should go for a single word as you know, not that we have to find one-on-one equivalences, but for natural sounding results, one word should fit the bill, and then we should like get out of that because what you tend to have with these things is sometimes prepositions are a problem because they create gaps on, through, or something like so. None of that applies to Spanish grammar or syntax. So we should try to, just free ourselves from that problem. Very good.
Professor, also
Good.
because as a verb in Spanish is like vandalizar, atacar. So when you say this instead the noun, you have much more possibilities. Causaron disturbios, causaron estragos, but you cannot say estraguearon y disturbiaron. So it's not they are not verbs in Spanish. So that's why I had a tendency to use a verb, causaron estragos, like a verb plus the what it is, the action, right? But to put it into a one single word, there are very little options. And for example, if I say atacaron, it's true that demostrar que atacaron dos poblaciones del sur de Irán. Okay, but it's not, attack is not in reality, but rampage could be one synonym for, as a verb, vandalizar, yes, but vandalizar es, no sabemos si realmente fue fue así, just because it's much more, I think it's much a worse situation, but it could be less frequent meaning for or synonym for rampage in Spanish is vandalizar.
Exactly. Thank you very much for your insight. Thank you very much for your insight. Very good. So now we're doing real translation work now. Maybe this is a little bit more practical than all the things that we've been doing. As I was saying, before the end of this certificate program, I am going to appoint you work on several of these assignments in this material, estrategias de traducción, translation strategies. And the reason is because this is the real deal. This is the real deal. And what I like it is that this is one of few books that you will find that you don't have to pay for that has been designed specifically with a comparative linguistics focus, of from the language span, our language pairs. It's very good for this reason. So what I'm going to do is ask you to work on the 3 sections, and I'll tell you which ones to go for, and take care of that business, because this is interesting. Now, what I would recommend you is when you have some time off, is for you to do this as practice, like personal practice. This is very good for you, for everybody, I would say, who's involved in translating from Spanish to English and English to Spanish. And you should inherit this book to our students. Now, if you teach any translation courses in the English department or at any branch of the university, remember, this is a great book for you to use with your students if you haven't used it before. Use it with them. And I think the discussions coming out from the different versions is a lot more enriching than simply telling people that I want this and I want that. So I strongly recommend using it. Okay. It's a very, very good resource. Okay. So I think we could have a brief break of 10 minutes. So would that work, Professor Marisol or Professor Belsis?
I guess it would.
Okay.
So if it's a 10-minute break, it would take us to 10 to 10. In other words, 9:50, would that work?
Wonderful. Great.
All right. See you then.
We'll be right back. we're talking about, yesterday we started talking about both Anglicisms and Hispanicisms. And in the case of Hispanicisms, we have learned that they're not as many as there are Anglicisms in Spanish, and the reasons are essentially, as we know, because English is it's a language that has to do with many more topics because of the way English is also being organized and the way it works as a language. The status, the international status and global status it has achieved, all of this has contributed to English becoming a penetration language, not only for Spanish, but for many other European and non-European languages, right? Because that's our case. We speak European or Indo-European languages. The thing is that we as translators must assume a position. We understand that there are Anglicisms and Hispanicisms, but we should not favor their transfer either into English or into Spanish by writing them. Okay, so if we have to adapt or domesticate a term, that should only be probably our last resort. If we don't find a suitable word, then we should resort to that. Otherwise, that's not the intention. The intention and the idea is that we must use the language as it is, or use what is in existence in the language, so that the language doesn't get corrupted, or we don't help corrupt the language more than what it already is in process. As we know, in linguistics, there's the concept of language variation, and this, of course, has to do with vocabulary changes and changes of different kinds, different levels in languages, because they're language in contact, essentially. So that's the case. That's the position we should assume based on what we discussed yesterday. So I'm going to bring in from my source here an example of how these Hispanicisms play along and do not always help, preserve meaning. So here in this instance, there's going to be a letter that's has been brought here in these slides. We'll back translate Ramon's letter into Spanish, okay, in which we conceived the letter. And notice how the English used here is almost a word-for-word transliteration from Spanish, complete with lexical and syntactical Hispanicisms. So yesterday we were talking that there are different kinds of Hispanicisms. They're lexical level, syntactic, even conceptual. So we have to detect them and be aware. We have to gain awareness of their existence at different levels. So some of his writing includes also some slang expressions from Argentine Spanish, which are listed here. Al divino botón, that's like useless. You have another one here, los milicos, the military. Se han copado, have grabbed. Los asuntos de las vacas, the matters dealing with cattle. El viejo, the father, no se ven bien, don't see eye to eye. That's like, do not agree, I think. Se arma la grande, there's a big fuss. So, okay, here's the letter text. So we read here. Le suplico que pases por alto la gran descortesía de mi parte al no escribir estos últimos 4 meses. Lo que pasó es que había planeado ir en persona y por eso desistí. Tenía el objeto de visita de ver si me podía acomodar en algún ministerio de gobernación después que ocurrieron los eventos que son de dominio público. Pero en vísperas de ausentarme, me escribe un amigo de la facultad para decirme que mi viaje sería al divino botón porque las cosas no se han cambiado en nada. Los milicos se han copado todo para ellos mismos. Como puedes esperar, me sentí desilusionado porque me di cuenta que esta vida de campo no me cae bien y de comercio no me quiero ocupar. Para mí, que cursé 3 años de estudios de traductor público, debería existir entrada en la vida oficial. Con la paciencia de siempre esperaré. Por desgracia, he tenido que ocuparme más a fondo con los asuntos de las vacas. Desgraciadamente, la semana pasada se murió el capataz. Tenía 78 y nació, se crió y trabajó aquí toda su vida. Sus restos recibieron sepultura en la propia estancia. Por lo demás, todo va como siempre. El viejo se ha repuesto de la pierna rota y se está ocupando nuevamente de las cosas, pero él y Ramoncito no se ven bien. El viejo no aguanta los discos de los Beatles y el pelo largo de Ramoncito, y cuando no se siente muy bien se arma la grande. Esther se dedica a asegurar la tranquilidad de la casa. De paso, me pide que te mande un saludo, a lo cual le agrego un gran abrazo de tu amigo Ramón. Okay. Now, you see, we have a situation here, which we have a letter, right, that we need to back translate. I did not bring the original here. I mean, this is the original in Spanish, but I didn't bring the version in English. Let's give it a try, to do some site translation here. So I beg you, forgive me. So forgive me for my lack of courtesy for not writing during these past 4 months. What happened is that I had planned to go there personally, and that is why I decided not to write. The object of, or the purpose of my visit was to find out if you could help me get a position, right, in a ministry or government office after the events, public, public, or the known events, right, of the known events. So, when I was about to depart, right, a friend of the faculty wrote to me to tell me that my trip would be, I'll call it Divino Botón. That'll be pretty much like, let me see. Let me go back a bit. Sería inútil, right? Because things haven't changed at all. The military have taken over everything over there. As you can see, or over here, as you can see, I was disappointed because I realized that life in the ranch, it doesn't. This is another difficult one. Hold on. Doesn't suit me, okay? And I don't want to have to do with business. For me, who studied 3 years as for becoming a public translator, there should be some entrance into official, life. With due patience, I'll wait. Unfortunately, I had to go, deeper into matters concerning the cattle ranching. Unfortunately, last week, the foreman, or the foreman of a ranch, or the ranch foreman, passed. He was 78. He was born and raised and worked here his entire life. So you see, the restos, okay? So he was buried here in his very own property, okay? So we have a word here that's a hard one to combine. So restos. Okay. Everything goes as usual. My father has recovered from his broken leg and he is taking care of his own business. But he and Ramoncito do not see eye to eye. My father doesn't enjoy the Beatle musics, the Beatle I'll call that I don't know, tunes maybe, or maybe discs, I don't know. And the long Ramosito's longer hair or long hair. And when he doesn't feel okay, we get in trouble here. So it's ensuring the peace of the house. And by the way, she asked me to say hello to you, to which I had a big hug from your friend Ramon. So we have a lot of sections that become very difficult. If you ask me, as I go ahead and do this site translation, for example, starting from where the text begins, I find here, que me pases por alto. Okay, this is a hard one to come by, right? So, how will you translate something like that? So, I beg you forgive me. That's what I could come up with, you know. And then la gran descortesía. Okay, we don't have, this is a lot of wordiness from Spanish here. So it's like I don't know, my lack of education, my disregard, something like that could be. But la gran descortesía, that's very difficult to find an equivalent to for this word, especially descortesía, because
Could
lack
be
of courtesy.
unkindness.
Which one do you say? What do you say? Again?
Unkindness.
Untimeness. Yeah, but you see,
Unkind.
if this is a
Right.
friendly letter, I don't want to be too, you know, that this has to go as natural and colloquial as I can. So yeah, probably I don't know if that is a common word. That's a good option, but that I'll have to look for it in a dictionary, right? Look at, for example, what happens when I say, y por eso desistí, okay? And that is why I decided not to write again, or not to write a letter, or I changed my mind. All that is possible, but the way you arrange that part is difficult because you don't know where to say that. So lo que pasó, what happened is that I was planning to go there personally, to get there, you know, in person, something like that. And then I changed my mind because of this. So it's like too long, very hard to come, you know, to preserve like the message, the intention, the purpose of my visit. So you say they refer to objeto, it's more like purpose. And then it's a si me podía acomodar, right? That's a hard one also. How will you say that instead? How will you put that? Like, if you could find me a position, if you could help me get a position, but it's hard, you see, because what it implies is that they're trying to use influence in order for a person to obtain something. Now later we learn the person has some studies, but generally in government positions, you require someone who would at least recommend you. So probably that's a way to put it. If you could recommend me to some position in a government or a ministry after the events that you know about, or the known events, or the past events, something happened with him, probably he was fired or something occurred, he lost a position he held before, we don't know, right? And look at this one, pero en vísperas, okay, right? So en vísperas de ausentarme, so how will you put that? Like right before leaving, or right before, that's one way I would put it, that's functional, because you would not say on the eve of my absence. That's just not a good choice to me, right? And then
On the
you have
eve of
over
my departure.
yeah, that could be my departure, exactly, but on the eve of my departure. But if you say on the eve of my departure, oh, I don't know. To me, that doesn't sound very natural. So right before or before leaving, or I would have to work my way around that one, because that's a hard piece. That's a hard chunk over here. For example, un amigo de la facultad. How will you put that in English? School friend or university classmate, or friend, because that's what it is. It's more like a classmate, not a friend. Not always. Roles are different. When you refer to the university, maybe it's a university friend. I don't know. I'm not so sure. To inform me, no, para decirme, to inform me that my trip would be useless here. So al divino botón, that's like that requires a great deal of understanding and adaptation in order to know what was meant. And I think what was meant is that it was a waste of time, right? Because things haven't changed at all. The military, and I assume that's because of the dictatorship, right, that they had in the country, had taken over, right? Han copado todo, had taken over all operation or uh, everything for themselves. By that, they probably mean for family members or friends, right? Or their associates, maybe. So look at this one. ¿Cómo puedes esperar? That's a hard one too. But you don't say anything like that in English. You don't say anything like that in English. To me, como puedes esperar could be something like um,
As you may
as usual,
see,
or
as you may see. Mhm.
as you may see, or as usual, something like that, right? Something of that in that direction. But that's a hard idea to find an equivalent to, okay? Because this is very contextual. So I was disappointed because I realized, me di cuenta, that esta vida de campo, okay? Life in the farm or farming, no me cae bien, okay? It's not my thing, probably, because I want to be colloquial and very clear. This is not my thing, or it's not my favorite. It's not my cup of tea. It's not something I enjoy, and I don't want to be involved in business, or I don't want to deal with business, right? Or I don't want to have anything to do with business. To me, right, or for me, or I did 3 years of formal studies to become a public interpreter. And there should be something for me in official life, or maybe in government, probably. That's what he probably meant. Now, look at this one. Con la paciencia de siempre esperaré. Wow. How will you put that in English? I'll wait with great patience, yes.
I
But
will
does
wait.
that mean something in English?
I will wait patiently as usual or as always.
Yeah, but I ask you, do you think this is like very clear? Like what I
But
mean is, does it sound like a translation? It sounds like a translation, and that's not the idea. The idea is that this should sound as if it was coming from a native speaker of English, not as a translation from an originally in Spanish. So,
well, the point here is that it is not actually in English. So, and the source is not English, it's Spanish. So we have to transfer from L1 to L2. In this case, no, it is L1 for Spanish in Argentina, it's first language. So to L2 in English, and how to transfer in keeping the essence or the sense. And for what I see, for example, this letter is very formal, so it is not that colloquial. And the formality in the sense of the expressions they use, very polished, they're very courteous, and the person has, so we have also how to convey the same sense in English, which is something that they're not used to, because probably the language is more business, commercial, international, not that colloquial. Although there are regions. Mark Twain was very colloquial in his writings, although, well, wonderful. I mean, I can't, I'm not comparing that with this letter, but I meant that we have to keep the same sense and not to incline us, because then I think that the translation would not render that faithfully what they want to mean. And we have to keep neutral. That's a translator job, and try to be faithful in rendering the same state of mind, of emotion, of condition. And that is my observation or comment on this.
Thank you. Thank you very much. But yeah, and a translator should also be, it must, as a translator, you must be faithful, but you have to be invisible. So being invisible also means that you have to render a version in the target language that is natural and that does not look like a translation from another language. So for us to go around this special challenge, we really need to think through, because imagine that you had to translate a letter for someone who wants evidence on some illegal dealing, for example, and the reader is someone who doesn't know any Spanish. That could be the case. So yeah, we need to convey the message as naturally sounding or naturally reading as possible. That's what I was referring. My observation was in that direction. So yeah, con la paciencia de siempre esperaré. Wow, that's a hard one. We really need to think through how you could frame that in an English at a proper register in English, that a person who doesn't know any Spanish will understand what it means. So I'll patiently wait as always, or find a way. Honestly, this takes a little bit of attention. It's something similar to what happened before, that you had some sections, some chunks in the text that deserve an upper index number, because this requires a bit of reflection on how to go about the proper register. And in this case, yeah, it's a personal letter, even though it's not a call, because the call will be like very informal. It's colloquial, conversational. You're like talking to a friend. This is the story, and you're asking for help to find a job. Who knows, and a little bit of personal information is revealed here. So, for example, here, he tenido que ocuparme más a fondo de los asuntos de las vacas. So you see that? That's challenging. And this is how Hispanicisms are going to start going into English, because translating something like this will require paying attention in the process to lots of terms that they just don't have an equivalent in English, because the way of thinking, through messages or putting together ideas in English is different. So this is the real thing, the real problem with Hispanicisms. Hispanicisms come from domesticating and adapting terms, dealing with local terms, regionalisms, thinking in terms of what the best option could be, make it as natural sounding as possible. Now we have AI that can help us, and you can ask AI. For example, esperaré pacientemente. You can ask ChatGPT or maybe any other DeepSeek or Claude. Okay, is there a way for me to make this more natural sounding or more native-like? Okay, like I'll wait patiently. Is there a way for me to say this more like what someone who speaks English as an L1 would say? Maybe the AI is going to offer me an option. Okay, and that's the one I think we could probably go for, because there are sections in the translation that deserve some additional pair of eyes. And we don't always have a native speaker around us to tell us, or some native speaker with enough qualification or criteria to tell us some useful advice on how to frame or word a message, because they don't even know themselves sometimes. So at least now we have an AI, and you can ask them in English. Okay, I need to know this. I'd like to know. You please provide me 3 options of how to go ahead and say this. Which one's more natural? All of that. So that is why I am in favor of using AI, because you don't have you don't have all the time to talk to a native speaker or someone who's a native speaker who's qualified to tell you what would be a better sounding choice for messaging or phrasing something. This is the thing. I don't know if you agree with me or not. Maybe you don't, but that's my position here. Okay. Well, regarding cognates, as I was telling you yesterday, I'm going to be separating the cognates and the historical elements that we've been dealing with in our program for some work. This is going to appear in classroom on Wednesday, okay? So you should expect this on Wednesday to be there. I'm going to be giving some instructions on what to do with it. So it's a good idea for you to, try to keep track of what we're, looking at in terms of cognates. Here we have molestar, okay? Molestar. It's a partial false cognate, equals to bother, right? Pedro está molestando al gato. It's not the same as sexually abuse, right? Or anything else. Instead, we should use abusar sexualmente, violar. That's like rape. Okay. Very good. So it's a sensitive word. We have moroso also, it's a false cognate. Default as on a loan, right? To be, not the same as in bad humor. Okay? Instead, use malhumorado or osco or some other word that means the person is it's not happy about something, right? Motivo, it's partial false cognate, equals motive as in ground or cause for something, right? Motivo de divorcio, but not as a motive or reason of a crime. It's more like móvil, right? That's a different term. We have nativo, it's a partial false cognate. It's a negative as a native language, not the same as native native of Mexico. Instead, natural de México. Es un natural de México. O es natural de México. Negociar is a partial false cognate. Negotiate in a diplomatic sense, but in general usage means to discuss or talk over without necessarily having a legal commitment, right? That's discussion more than anything, not committing. Nombramiento, this is a hard word, appointment, right? So naming a person to fill an appointment, but for nominating, nominar, that's a proponer como candidato. That'll be a different thing. Okay, or in English, it'll be something else like nominating, right? So we have noticia, it's a false cognate.
Appointed.
That's pardon?
Could be appointed.
Appointment or appointed, sure. For nominar,
Yeah, appointed.
right? Appointed, or to fill an appointment, exactly. Yeah, in some instances, it could be the hiring, maybe hiring process. That's a possible way to put it, but that'll be something beyond, right? We have noticia. That's not the same as notice because that'll be more aviso. But noticia is the news, right? So in singular, it's a piece of news. Una noticia interesante, an interesting piece of news, right? In plural means the news. Escuchó las noticias. The news is always plural. We know that. Notorio, partial false cognate, right? Well known, famous in a neutral or positive way. Okay? So that's notorio, well known. But not the same as well known for negative reasons, de mala fama, infamous, right? Famous or infamous, that's a different thing. We also have notorio. Oh, well, that's repeated. So in general terms, notorio it's an interesting word because that'll be famous, but not as infamous, el infame, right? De mala fama. That's a different thing. Okay, we have ocasión, occasion in the sense of opportunity, not in the sense of event, right? For event, we must refer to a suceso or acontecimiento. Also sale or bargain. Una barata, right? That's what they're referring to, baratillo, gran ocasión, 50% sale, on sale, right? Products or something like that, some kind of a promotion. I had a hard time translating casa de ocasión. I don't know if you are familiar with the term. What I came up with was more like a brothel for casa de ocasión. And I don't know if you would provide some possible candidate word for this term, casa de ocasión. I got motel, and I also got casa de brothel. That's a hard one to come by because look, here in Panama, a push button, which is as you know, one of those places where couples go. It's a very difficult word to find because I was checking and I discovered that there are motor hotels, and I think that's the closest one in meaning to a push button as we know it in Panama, because everybody knows what that is if you live in Panama, right? But in other locations in other countries, they have different names for it. I've noticed is a motor hotel. For some others, it's like a brothel. For others, it's like a motel. Uh, but you know the connotation is not the same. I don't know if you have ever encountered those difficulties. Okay, so how would you go, for example, for baratillo? What would be your candidate equivalent for baratillo in English, please?
Sale,
Mhm.
Also say discounts.
Mhm, mhm. But remember, baratillo is a noun, right? So
Yes.
if you had to translate that from a document, so how will you put that? Like a sale, simply a sale?
Yes.
Well, if it's informal, you can probably say a steal.
Okay, okay. So there are different words, you see, that could help us explain this. All right.
I have a comment about what you were saying before about Hispanisms. I think it's just it's very challenging because each Latin American country has its own his words, and sometimes when you have to translate them, we need to like the cultural connotation is very important in order to understand first in the Spanish that is spoken in that area. We as translators we need to understand first what does that mean because it's not the same as we translate like colloquially Panamanian people speak. We know all our slang here. Let's talk about it. But in other regions, the Spanish that they speak has different words according to that area, and we don't know all of them. So it's something that we really need to pay attention to. We need to study the words first. We need to comprehend them first, and then try to translate it in a way, as you were saying, natural. It's challenging. It's very challenging, because there are in every country in Latin America they have their own words. And of course, we Panamanians, we don't know all of them. Maybe we have heard some of them, maybe, maybe not. So it's a matter of we need to study them first. So we have to get into the culture, into that culture first to understand the text. And then, so it's an extra work. That's my opinion.
Yeah. You know what? I haven't run myself into a dictionary of Latin American terms. I haven't seen it. Maybe I've been looking for something like this in the wrong places, and that is why I probably have never seen it. Maybe if I travel to Spain, I could find, or if I check some Spanish websites, probably we could find some of that work. I'm sure it does exist, but I haven't seen anything like, out there in the market that specifically helps someone know terms like from Dominican Republic and Costa Rica or in Panama or elsewhere, Mexico, etc., that are equivalent. That kind of thing would be very useful because that's part of the challenge of being a translator. Is like the hidden challenges are right there, you're supposed to know so much, but you can only know as much, really. This is the problem with translation. And that is why we have to say no sometimes. We cannot say yes all the time. When we are required to do certain things, we have to say no because it's probably, it's like beyond our knowledge or comprehension. Okay, it's always a good thing to go over some of these proverbs as well. And let's take a look. We have La necesidad hace maestro. Necessity is the mother of invention. Right? It's the mother of invention. Necessity. So, levantar la mesa is to clear the table, llevar a cabo to carry out. Many of these are not always proverbs or idioms. Some of them are stock phrases. And they have become stock phrases because they're very stable and so repetitive. That's part of the reason why they're here listed. Llevarse bien con, to get along well with. Lo de menos is the least of it. That's the least of it. Los niños y los borrachos siempre dicen la verdad. out of the mouths of babes and sucklings. Okay, or in vino veritas. Okay? I've said this couple of times, and it doesn't always. I don't always find a connection. Sometimes I need to look for it right somewhere. Once more, now that we have internet and AI, all this is a lot easier. In the past, all of this was highly challenging. And the reason is because you didn't have anywhere to go and check it out if you didn't have a dictionary. And dictionaries were not the best choice, and that's why everything was not very good, you know. And we have to confess that things in the past probably were not very good quality, and the reason is because they relied on dictionaries. And dictionaries, as you know, they're a problem for translation. Look at this, manos a la obra. It's simply let's get to work. Okay, it's the best possible stock phrase for it. Matar dos pájaros de un tiro, to kill two birds with one stone. Yeah. And so forth. And so forth. So, okay. So, what about the power of the written word? Okay, let's do a little bit of a reflection here. Okay, what we have learned so far is that the word plays an important role in communication. Communication is very important. Without communication, civilization would not be possible. So the word plays an important role. What does that mean? It means that books play an important role in who we are and what our lives are. So that takes us back to the Bible. That's why in translation we always go back to the Bible, because the Bible is I would call it like the stone, the cornerstone of Western civilization, either we like it or not. Our European heritage is grounded on biblical, a Christian thought, and Christianity is based on the Bible. And this is what lies behind the civilization that we're living in. And all of this is, you know, based on the word. Words have the, you know, the capacity of upholding us or crushing us. So that's the power of the written word, especially the written word, because as you know, as we speak, this goes away. It's okay in the moment when we're communicating something or listening to something, but the written word is permanent, right? And that becomes a law, that becomes a rule, that becomes a judgment, moral, and this has great power on human life, either we like it or not. That's why civilization is based on the written word, and the books are so important. For example, at the university or at any university you work, the ultimate work or the ultimate mission for any academic or scholar should be writing a book. Why is that? Well, because of legacy, right? There must be some legacy. It's like having a child, okay? It's like, well, the children of your thinking is the book that you write. And that is what will be read in the future about you once you pass. You leave something behind after you pass, and people will continue reading what you wrote. So it is a legacy. It is important, okay? And that is why translation work is so important too, because this is the way for us to make information known. And we need to do these reflections, very important. This is no child's play. It's a major accomplishment in life, okay? And we should aspire to translate and do important things, such as translating. If you've noticed, many of the scholars we've mentioned here, Antonio de Nebrija, and very recently, yesterday, we talked about Jose Martí. All of them translated work, and that was a way for them both to make a living and leave a legacy. Okay. And many people are known because of this work that they do with the written word. Okay, I don't know if you see how important this reflection is. Now, concerning deep meaning, that means that translation work focuses on messages, the ideas coming from the authors of books, right? You're a researcher. Your work is scholarly. As a translator, you will do your best to understand an original, and you will convey or communicate that information the very best you can in another language. So you're more than just someone who aids in the transference of information. You are also doing some meaning breakdown for people, because lots of information is just not clear, or maybe is there, but people will never see it or will never understand it until you provide an explanation, and you you enrich their lives with your reflection. Okay. All right, we're gonna do a little bit of review of Anglicisms and Hispanicisms that we were talking about before. But before we get to that, I'd like to know if you have any comment concerning the written word, the importance of the written word. For example, when we say that we should not, we should live with Anglicisms and Hispanicisms, but we shouldn't help those transfer into either languages, because our role as an in-betweener is to preserve the languages as they are to the best of our understanding. What we mean is, people say many things, but what, ultimately is preserved is what, people write, what people read. So we know that the written word has more power than the spoken word. Spoken word is important at some level, but what will be in history is what you write. So we must be careful about what we write. That is, I think, a part of the reflection we're trying to make here. So let's not.
Yeah, I
Sure.
would like to make a comment on this. Well, yes, for endurance purposes also, even for civilizations, for groups of people, I mean, if there is a vast, there are vast reasons to write and to have these written down. For the sake of endurance, as I was telling you, but it is also because of the power of these facts, things that are taken from one period to another, leaving these trace. And this is how have been all of this production have been a matter of or subject for research. We have people who had collected that much, and we have a great collection of information in history and all in every field, so that we can have that information up to today. And also to use an expression in Spanish is la palabra dicha o oral se la lleva el viento. And it's true, and that's very true. For something to be taken for granted, and that also to remain physically, I think that it should be written down. That's or otherwise people would change versions. And this happened a lot also at the beginning when we didn't have ways to reproduce the material. It was just orally. So chances are that the message would be changed, altered, and sometimes distorted too.
Thank you very much for your comment. Yes, so true. This is true. So a translator is a contributor to the communication of human thought and the preservation of ideas. Essentially, that's also a translator's role. So I think what happens is that in our universities and our institutions, politicians don't understand any of this, and they don't want to think of preserving anything because everything is just temporary for them. They don't care about leaving any legacy or having any legacy or keeping a memory or preserving information. They really don't care much about it. Okay, that is partly the reason why, for instance, in our country, it's so difficult for everything to go digital. I think there is not there is like some kind of desire of deleting everything after administrations pass. And remember that we have a digital print. It's very important to leave proof of everything that occurs. And the lack of accountability is connected to this desire of not keeping things, you know, and that shouldn't be the case. That shouldn't be the case. So people who don't care about preserving information, they shouldn't go into government. They should be prevented for going into government because what this reveals is that eh, they know that they're doing all kinds of illegal things that they don't want anything to be neither preserved nor translated to other languages because that'll be evidence against them. So that's the way I see it. It's part of a conspiracy of not and that is why there is this also I would call it a lack of interest in making the law stable or the legal system very stable and having these magistrates in permanent positions, which are like no one may or would remove them from their appointments. This is part of the conspiracy of keeping everything like in the air, up in the air. No digital print, no translation, no evidence of anything, because the written word is powerful, and what we say, what we do, should be preserved. That's part of what is happening in our context. Yeah, and the translator's role is generally uh, inconvenient. It's inconvenient to understand what someone means and translate it in other languages because that makes things accessible across different levels. Okay, so good. We're gonna do our best here. This is simple. I don't think there are as many cases, so I could come up, with a couple here. Let's do some site translation here, just as a wrap up on this topic on Anglicisms and Hispanicisms. If you could provide some site translation here, that'll be very, very useful. All right, let's go. Number 1, please.
Okay. I'm working on this morning's meeting.
Mhm. All right, number 2.
Yeah, it would be like we are going to hit a home run with that project.
Okay. What about number 3, please? 4 or 5?
The boss wants a, I don't know, clear logo for the product.
Four, 5, please.
We could see, let's check.
Sorry.
No, that's it.
We are going to review the budget before the deadline.
And 5, please.
The team presented a briefing last night.
Okay. Okay, now let's do something. How would you put this in proper terms by reading ourselves of all those Anglicisms included? How would you phrase that in Spanish, like properly?
Estoy trabajando en la reunión de esta mañana.
Okay, second.
Vamos a tener un éxito con este proyecto o con ese proyecto. Tendremos un éxito, puede ser también, con ese proyecto.
El resumen, sí.
Next, please.
El jefe quiere la marca clara, o sea, sería como la marca, branding. Vamos a revisar el presupuesto antes de la fecha límite.
Good. Thank
El
you.
equipo presentó el resumen anoche.
Thank you very much. Exactly. So you see, this is challenging. For example,
Yes.
for branding, I don't think there is a term I could come up with. I was checking this out, like branding. That's a
Mhm.
hard one. And dealing with something like the briefing, that's another hard one. And this when you're interpreting, you don't have time to think very much about it. Is the stock phrases will usually play a role here, and it's important to have those lists of stock phrases available, especially over here. This is all related to commercial translation. So let's take a look at this one. We have a couple more here.
Professor, do you want it in English or you want what would be in Spanish, the words that are?
Yeah, I would definitely like both, please.
Ah.
Both, you know, taking away the Anglicism and also the English version.
Well, the first one, you have to send the email to the customer today, or today you have to send the email to the customer. Entonces, en español sería el correo electrónico. Tienes que enviar un correo electrónico.
Thank you. Thank you. Number 7, please.
That design is very cool, isn't it?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Next, please.
I was assigned a new mentor for the onboarding.
All right. And I need 7 and 8, you know, without the Anglicism,
Ah,
please.
me asignaron un nuevo mentor para la incorporación.
Okay. And number 7.
Maybe just bueno. Sí, sí, es muy bueno, ¿no crees?
Okay. Number 9. 9 and 10.
The app has a bug that needs to be fixed. La aplicación tiene un problema que hay que arreglar.
Okay.
Un virus que hay que arreglar, corregir.
All right. Thank you.
Like, let's do a brainstorming for the pitch.
Thanks.
La lluvia de ideas. Vamos a hacer una lluvia de ideas.
Para el lanzamiento.
All right. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, at first we may underestimate them, but in
Yes.
reality, this is quite challenging because people mean things and as communication is flowing. Remember that this concerns communication. Sometimes we need to think a little bit, before we provide some rendering. And remember, a translator is also an interpreter. It's not that you just translate and I don't interpret. You're expected to interpret at some point. And this is the challenge. Once more here, stock phrases play an important role. So whenever you run into those glossaries of commercial, legal, medical, uh, technical, different kinds of translation, don't underestimate or play down on their role. They are important because these are like the way out of a lot of problems. Okay, so let's take a look at this ones over here. You see, so I'm going to the meeting this mañana. They may speak like this, So here's the jefe in charge of the project. People may say these things. So, and this is flowing, and saying other things as well. We need to finish the deadline by Friday or we'll miss the deadline. Okay. Can you bring the salsa for the party? Okay. Well, please pass me the refrescos from the fridge. People speak like this sometimes. And look at this. I've got a one idea for the campaign. Well, let's do a quick brainstorming session for the pitch today. For the pitch, okay? Well, the app has bug that needs to be we need to fix here ASAP. They scheduled a welcome call to onboarding new clients. So this is something smooth cool, don't you think? So all of this is flowing and mounting. It's very hard to deal with because it's a lot. It's a lot of information. Now I have some more challenging ones here that I'd like you to help me out. This includes some Spanish systems. Remember that Hispanicisms, just like Anglicisms, are not only lexical, like terminology or word level. You have other kinds which are syntactical sometimes, others are conceptual. So if you detect something, let me know. Tell me, for example, in number one, is there any Hispanicism you may detect over there? All right, probably you look at this and you say, well, where am I going to find this? Well, you don't know. Maybe you have to transcribe a conversation, maybe a phone call. Who knows? Maybe you're going to run into something like this coming from, I don't know, some source where people are bilingual and they speak like this.
For example, in number 3, is there a mistake? I don't know, because an error, because it doesn't sound the others, although they have Spanish English mixed, they're I think they're quite grammatical. But number 3, the client asks for a mucho more granular KPI. Okay, KP. Well, for number 3, I have el cliente pidió una gráfica. KPI es de control, una gráfica de control más en detalle o más detallada para observar el progreso. That would be number 3.
Hmm? So some people kind of look at this and say, wow, how come someone's going to write like this? Well, if you're transcribing, you'll be surprised, right? Or the kinds of things people say. So this is a possible, very challenging, a fairly challenging assignment. Because, well, I think in most of these sentences, it's clear what they're referring to, but there are others that the meaning is outlandish. We don't know what that is. And if it goes very technical, then we're gonna be kind of lost there. You see, hacer leash with the vendors. Hacer leach. How would you translate that? The policy is to hacer leech with new vendors. At least punto de contacto, number 4, we know that we have an equivalent stock phrase for that. So point of contact. Okay. That's alrighty. Mañanita stand up. Okay. So what's that? It's like maybe
Una
they're
breve
referring to,
reunión. Una breve
yeah,
reunión.
yeah, some kind of, yeah, but putting that in proper terms, it's like what what, a coffee break, something. I don't know. That could be even a coffee break. I'm not sure. So we know American people work and they eat at the same time. Not like in our context, but that could be that also. And we have to pay attention to that. Look at that, like pushback. So if the stakeholders don't push back, there's Spanish, like se echan para atrás. That to me is Hispanicism in English. Hispanicize. That's syntax of a Hispanicize to me. That although like to nuke, right?
Yes,
Okay, that's
exactly.
like it's nuclear bomb or like that's too much. Like that's hyperbolic to me. So that is what we're looking at here, It is challenging. Take a look at these others. Number 6, they staged a soft launch to test the MVP, but the feedback was muy fixed. So all of these hyperbolic forms, right, muy mixed. Take a look at number 7. After the meeting, we'll do a quick coffee break and reboot with fresh ideas. Probably that reboot. I think that could be from Spanish. Also, the director asked for a bilingual client-facing brief with a dash of street smart tonal. That part on the street smart tonal, that's like the tone, street smart tone, like some kind of probably a fashionable music, probably. But you see, maybe referring to a ringtone, right? Ringtone for a cell phone, or maybe or some device for communication. Or 9, we need to align La Línea with the fiscal year, and otherwise the budget goes out of balance. What the La Línea to me is a timeline with the fiscal year, but then La Línea, that's if you're not,
Could be policy. They're referring to a policy.
could be the policy, could be the timeline, but if you're not in that context and you have to transcribe, then you're going to have a lot of questions. Probably if you don't belong, you cannot do this job. So there are many things that are going to keep, causing disruption in your work. And a touch of hustle. Take a look. What does that mean exactly? A touch of hustle. So there's this problem with Anglicisms and Hispanicisms flowing and creating disruption, because sometimes they even flow in through technical areas. That's the problem. And transcribing calls, transcribing meetings, dealing with this information, reports. Okay, it's quite challenging. Okay. Well, I think what we need to remember is this. A good translator should not write what people say, essentially. If we do that, we're aiding in the transfer of all kinds of things which should not go into writing unless they prevail. So we know languages are constantly evolving and there is linguistic variation and change. Linguistic change is part of the life of a language, but then we shouldn't, transfer that information. We should try to use the best possible grammar, the best possible terminology. Okay, that's the guideline. Okay. I need to go into history again. This week, we should be talking, about what happened with the 19th and early 20th century, because now we're moving past some translation work that occurred earlier in the century, and also later during the last century. I mean, 20th and 19th century. So we're in the 21st. So we should be referring to late 19th century, early 20th century. So probably this translator.
Sorry, I would like to ask you a question about a
Sure.
word that is really moving all the way in Panama, maybe around the world too, but here people are talking too much about the word co-working. I would like to have your opinion about this word.
Yeah,
It's caught
co-working,
my
imagine.
attention because people are not they are using without even thinking that it's like it's just English, right? But they are using this word a lot recently, also because with these new kind of businesses that are moving around, startups and so on, they are using the word co-working. And here in Panama, there are also buildings that they have inside areas, especially for co-working. So co-working, I think, is not the meaning is moving a little bit in the sense that it's not just for working with someone, but also the area is also called in that way. I would like to know your opinion about that, Professor.
If you ask me, co-working is more like space, right? Right? Space. Because it's like out of office work. It's not necessarily a workplace, like the traditional workplace of an office's desk that you're sitting at. It's more like for liberal professions. That's the way I see it. It's like for lawyers, maybe, I don't know. So, if I run into a word like that, that's like trabajo independiente, could be, or because the kind of professionals who go into that, they're the ones who are not employed by any, formally employed. They're self-employed, I would say, right? And they need a location where they would run their business. So yeah, it's very hard to translate, because this is a 21st century business model or employment scheme. I don't know. Um, Espacio compartido,
Yes,
espacio colaborativo. Does that make
sí,
sense?
pero also, yes, also because people are using these espacios colaborativos not just for working like to have an office without have to pay a rent, but also to do also
They share rent, even
events.
less
And it's
expenses.
a kind, yes. So it's very interesting how this word also it's kind of has is having a kind of transformation. It's not just that's what I'm seeing here in Panama because when we see they also offer like events in our core working area. It's not like in the past that you hire a space or like a salon de un hotel, whatever like that. And if you want you have an event there, but they are using also these areas, co-working areas, also to present, okay, and also to offer events, social events, not just business events. So social, I have seen that.
Right, right. Yeah, and it's like a rental. Um, it's a place for people to rent, right? And just for something very concrete, something. So it's also a way, I don't know, it's like part of selling a professional image.
Yes, and for example, it can be said for days. It could be one day you're having a meeting and then you require like a space, a professional, and that has to do with the digital nomads, people who they can't work at home, but they have to nor virtually, but they have to have a face-to-face, for example, dealing or conversation with a possible partner that comes from business. There is another word also that I heard recently, or I saw actually, in an announcement for a seminar, and they say, and it was in Spanish, eh, skilling and reskilling. Eh, I understood that it has to do with capacitaciones, but they are using the word skilling.
Ay, Dios mío.
Wow. So all of these are flowing from English into Spanish, and we don't have equivalences for them. You see the
Yes.
problem? Have you tried RAE? RAE is always behind. That dictionary, and they take too long to provide some equivalent to a word. I've been reading co-working here. It's from the year 2000, so it's been out there for 25 years now. So probably there is a potential equivalent in the RAE dictionary. But if you ask me, it's like trabajo colaborativo or espacio colaborativo. That would be my translation. I don't know if that would work or not, depending on what it is, right? Trabajo colaborativo or espacio colaborativo, because it could mean different things.
Yes, Professor. Also with the words that are not coming up like podcast, or for example, you say, ay, te dio un cringe. Ay, me dio un cringe. What?
Right, right. Strange. Yeah. That's describing some reaction, like some emotional reaction, right? I don't know what in Spanish could describe that feeling, that kind of emotion,
Yes,
because if you
that's what it caught my attention because it's like very specific, but also in Spanish, I was wondering, like, como un miedo, pero no es miedo, un temor, eh, something like that,
exactly
un sobresalto. It's, but in English, it's very specific.
right.
I think it's important also to get updated with all these new terms that are coming around. Also, because in order to understand the meaning and how the word would have some kind of transformation with time, in order to know how to translate it in the right way, at least.
Yeah, yeah. Cringe is a very, very difficult word. It's some embarrassment, imagine, or it's like maybe some fear, but it's a hard one. It's como una duda, right? Something like that. Una inseguridad. That has to do with posture and the way people carry themselves or how they supposed to carry themselves. You know? So those are difficult terms. Yeah. So communication is an ongoing challenge. Well, that's what we have learned here. Okay. I don't know if you have any other comment. Okay, I'm moving on into this because literary translation is challenging, and there are some translators who have translated into English some novels. Martin Fierro is one of those, and Walter Owen has an interesting history. So originally he was a Scottish man who was born in Scotland, and then he moved to Argentina, and as a translator, he's one of the few who translated, from Spanish into English for the English population or English speaking population or English readers to learn about literature in Spanish, right? So we read here that born in Glasgow, he spent much of his boyhood in Montevideo. As an adult, returned to the River Plate area, work as a stockbroker. He had the opportunity to become bicultural and bilingual. He applied his skill to the translation into English of major epic poems of the southern part of South America. Quite an accomplishment because, there's a lot to communicate and it's not always easy. In so doing, his objective was not simply aesthetic, but cultural and even political, in terms of bringing closer together the English-speaking peoples and those of Latin America. So, yeah, how difficult it should have been for someone to communicate all this, very culturally loaded content from novels, poetry, etc., and communicate that into English in another language. Very challenging. So as he puts it, sorry about typo, he hoped that his work is modest, in its modest way was and could advance, right, between peoples of different speech communities, a friendly interchange of thought and feeling, which is the foundation of mutual esteem and sure establishment of good fellowship, right? His intention was very noble because no one would do this um, with other purpose because really there is no business in all of this. In his preface, sorry, to Martin Fierro, he expresses the same idea in verse. So you read here in Spanish, right? And he explains this. So that para que el gaucho inglés sepa lo que el gaucho argentino era y el argentino que el inglés también es gaucho a su manera. So there is some poetry here, but see, it's an interesting mission. I would call it very altruistic because there is a cultural distance here, a lot of it. What Owen did was to English his verb for translate the principal epics of the part of Latin America he knew best. José Hernández is Martín Fierro, Alonso de Ercilla and Zúñiga la Araucana, and Zorrilla de San Martín Tabaré, among others. So he not only did it with well-known works, he translated others. And he did this, I think, not necessarily for business, but it did it just for the sake of helping people understand or learn about literary work or literature from other parts of the world. In so doing, he made available to the English-speaking world neglected masterpieces of the Southern Cone, right? As I was telling you, there's a great deal of distance, cultural distance. So translators do important work that helps people understand each other. But as a translator, he felt obliged to tell the readers in extensive introduction or prefaces how he crafted his works of translation. His legacy is a double one, speaking about Walter Owen, of considerable value to both the reader of epic Latin American poetry as well as a student of translation. Translating all of these masterpieces is quite an accomplishment. And it's usually one that people do not do for business because not everybody is going to be interested in reading this material. So this is just a way to create bridges, really. He avoided excessively literal translations, right? Once more, literal translation again is like a failed attempt, really. So he realized that there would be a little interest to the reader trying to understand the Gaucho or Araucanian culture. He was willing to sacrifice what he called verbal accuracy, word for word rendition, in order to achieve clarity and ease of style, right? Once more, we get to this point in which we need to sacrifice one thing in favor of another. So the more natural, the more idiomatic, the less literal, and the less constrained, right? Of any rendition. So in order to achieve clarity and ease of style, right? His ultimate goal was what he would call equivalent impact. Not equivalence, but equivalent impact. It must produce the consciousness on the reader an equivalent total impression to that produced by the original work upon readers of whose vernacular it was written. So it's the emotion that is trying to be communicated, the emotion and the idea, right? More than word for word, sentence by sentence, phrase by phrase. He reiterates this philosophy in his preface to the translation of La Araucana. Translations of poems which adhere faithfully to the original yield small pleasure to the reader, and what value they have is for students of philology or semantics, and consider the translation of poetry into poetry a liberal art and not an exact science. To coin a portmanteau term for this sort of translation might be called a psychological transvernacularization. He coined a term for the communication of the meaning and the emotion rather than going for the word semantic analysis of poetry, because the idea was to read poetry for the enjoyment of the emotion, that the poetry would produce in a person, and the thinking, also the analysis, but not that technical analysis that's going to break things down and go for words and terms. Rather than that, he refers to enjoying something similar to the original, and for the sake of that enjoyment he needed to sacrifice precision, probably, or accuracy, so to speak. So a transvernacularization in an opening stanza, we have an example here. Aquí me pongo a cantar. I sit me here to sing my song, al compás de la vihuela, to the beat of my old guitar, que el hombre lo desvela, to the man whose life is a bitter cup, una pena extraordinaria, with a song may yet his heart lift up, como la ave solitaria, as a lonely bird on a leafless tree, con el cantar se consuela, that sings neath the gloaming star, the gloaming star. So you see, there's a great deal of adaptation here. And we read here, in the preface to the translation of La Araucana, Owen invites the reader to share with him the intimate details of the process by which he takes the original poem of the Chilean conquest, makes a first rough semi-literal translation, and then plays with each line, word, and syllable to achieve the translation which most closely conveys the spirit, meaning, and rhythm of the 16th century Spanish original. So quite a challenge. And this is why this is known in very concrete, specific circles, because not everybody would like to either listen or read to this, read this information or get this information on how he proceeded to translate poetry. This preface stands as one of the most complete explanations which a poet translator has ever given of the intricacies of his work. Okay, so he described his mental process, very, which I imagine was, hard, heavy. He modestly says, it will not be foreign to the purpose of these introductory remarks, and will perhaps be of some entertainment to my reader if I illustrate the working of the system I have outlined as applied to the opening stanza of Ercilia's epic. So, as you notice here, this person invested so much time and effort in order to make this enjoyable in English. Right? I will first give the original Spanish stanza, then my first roughly literal translation, followed by a running commentary showing the development of the Finnish English version. And here we have a comparison. The Spanish original by Alonso de Ercilla, 1569, Owen's first approximately literal translation in the early 1900s. No las damas, amor, no gentilezas, not ladies, love, nor courtesies. De caballeros, canto enamorados, of amorous nights I sang. Ni las muestras, regalos y ternezas, nor tokens, sweets, and favors, de amorosos afectos y cuidados, of love's delights and cares. Mas el valor, los hechos, las proezas, but the valor, deeds, and exploits, de aquellos españoles esforzados, of those stalwart Spaniards, que a la cerviz de Arauco no domada, that on Arauco's untamed neck pusieron duro yugo por la espada, placed by a sword a rigorous yoke. So, this is hard. Now, in our book on estrategias de traducción, translation strategies, the third section that we're going to be checking out has some of this. And the reason why I'm including this in this certificate program is because I have not seen at our university, at Universidad de Panamá, that we have any collaboration in this regard. We don't have anything like this. Bringing some literary work from Spanish, trying to translate that into English. There's a lot of work over there. There's a lot of work to do. No one, I don't know if I'm wrong, you let me know if I'm wrong. Probably I'm wrong, I don't know. But I've been reading for a while what people do, and we don't have anything in this direction. I don't know, maybe one of the literature professors could tell me a little more about this. Professor Bonilla, are you there? Maybe somebody knows about something they have accomplished or they have attempted in this regard. Because there is plenty of poetry out there from our context that could be translated into English. I don't know if we have attempted to do that.
You mean translating poetry?
Right. Or any other piece of literature, Panamanian literature that you recall of
Right,
course.
so
Well, I tried, but it was just I tried once to have to translate a poem. But what you say, it's true. I think that there is an enormous uh, amount of literary work in Spanish from and obviously from Latin America that had not been translated, and I think that that's a work that can be lost or at least to be shared with other cultures, especially uh, in other languages. What I was going to say is that I tried once to translate. I don't know. I shouldn't have it around in one file. I have to search for it. Of a poem that was written by a girl, Amanda Gorman. She's a Black American girl. I mean, very young. And she wrote The Hill We Climb. And that was so beautiful to me, and I tried to translate it into Spanish. But now that we are doing this exercise, I think that I have to go over it because there would be, some rendering that probably will need to be more accurate, trying to express what over the hill we climb means. Yeah, but it was definitely a great deal of work, but very satisfying too.
Wonderful. So yeah, in case you're looking for a niche, this is one of those niches I think few people dare to walk into, translating literary or doing literary translation. Uh, since we learn a lot from experience, whoever goes into this, I'm sure will have several books to write because what you'll find about this is scarce, really. It's not that common. So some people say, for example, here, Robert Frost, that poetry is what gets lost in translation. Why do you think this is?
Maybe what he's trying to say there is that people intend to translate literal meaning makes it difficult to translate the poetry there is behind.
Right. It's the emotion, the part that so hard, and the beauty also of language. So finding equivalences is quite a challenge. So it's not only that meaning needs to be preserved, but also the beauty. Okay, very good. Owen notes that the first cut carries the sense of the original, but the rhythm and ring and martial tramp of Ercilla are absent. The epic note is wanting. The bird of poetry has escaped our net of English words. No patching or mending of the new form will recapture the spirit of the original. So that's the emotion that gets lost, right? What the translator has to do is mentally digest the material, the raw material, and once it's well assimilated, imagine himself, Ercilla, sitting quill in hand in old Madrid about the third quarter of the 16th century, with a clean sheet before him and his portfolio of manuscripts notes at hand, ruminating the opening lines of his epic of the Araucan Wars. So it's like you have to, assume this character of the author. You have to kind of impersonate who the writer is in order for you to communicate this emotion and his feeling. So it's like getting under the skin of the author. It's quite a challenge, quite a challenge. So translation is never easy, never. Okay, here we have another author, Joseph Brodsky, says that poetry is what is gained in translation. Why do you think he says this?
Artistry, I would say, is what is gained in translation. Artistry, referring to poetry.
Yeah. And that is why we keep on, tripping over this translation art, translation science. It is both things, both, because there is a method or approaches to translation, but there is also this other component that if you do not have what it takes, because being a poet, it's just like not everybody can be a doctor or an engineer, not everybody can be a poet or an artist. So having this special gift, it is challenging. So for someone to translate that aspect of communication, this is something. Right? We have also here that Owen proceeds to do just that for 6 pages of his preface, showing the reader in great detail how he arrives at his final version. And then he describes it, step by step. You can see here how he goes about um, providing first literal translation to it, and then he performs some adaptation to that in order to include some of the elements he managed to communicate into English, right? Okay. All right. So take a look. This is always a challenge. Probably that's why it's so difficult for people to understand other cultures. Poetry is one of those ways culture is conveyed here. Take a look at this from Arabic here. I think this is Arabic, right? So I said, does your loving heart show signs of suffering? She said, aren't the tears in my eyes a sufficient sign? So nothing's very clear here. You need to be a very special person with special care for literature in order to pay attention and do your best to communicate this to another audience in another culture. So many things are very subtle and not very clear. And the more cultural distance there is between the people, the harder it is for the messages to be conveyed. If you ask me, some of the things that people say in some cultures are very like strange, from Arabic, from Japanese, from this, very, very concrete, very distant cultures. What people say is just very foreign to us. So the same happens with us. It's what we say is very foreign to them. So this takes us to another discussion that I don't know if we're prepared for this discussion or not, but I think we're prepared for this discussion, okay? I think we should be prepared for this discussion because this now goes away from the art and scientific aspect of translation that's theoretical and goes into other realms. We need to start talking about heritage, and it's very important also to deal with what translation means for in terms of religion also, because there is a religious aspect that is immersed in the activity. How did that come to us? That came us through the church, essentially, Christian church. Also, Islam or Muslim religions, the Muslims, they communicated also a great deal of those values. Same as with the Jewish communities, they also have communicated the meaning of translation for the soul and for the human. This is, we are ascribed to a faculty of humanities, and we're there for a reason. Everything that concerns the humanities has to do with the spiritual also, because this is a dimension of the human being. Languages play a role in this. We're going to do this discussion, I think, tomorrow, because I want us to do this very early. And what we will discuss here, probably you will not agree. Maybe you'll disagree on about these things, but that will depend on who you are. However, I must tell you, we are at the university, so we talk about all kinds of things. Talk about all kinds of things, and eh, here we need to talk about the Bible. We're going to talk about the occultism here also, and translation. We're going to do a little bit of demonology here also. Uh, Christian philosophy, a little bit of that too, because believe it or not, since translation is immersed in communication and culture, we cannot escape religion and the spiritual. Um, um, as it seems, the history of our civilization, you know, is affected by access to information. So if you cannot read the Bible, you will not learn what God's plan is from a religious perspective. So the translator comes in, to play a role here. But according to the scripture, which is inherited to us as an explanation of how we came to be, humans are not supposed to communicate in a single language, like one language for the whole of mankind. That's like there's a limitation for that, and we know that from Genesis and what we've read from our Christian Bible, where it states very clearly that God decided that mankind should not be able to communicate because among themselves in one language, because we could do more harm than good if we get to have that kind of communication. So we've had some candidate lingua francas and strong languages that have played a role, but we've never had like a single human language for all mankind from the very beginning, because that was like something that was against God's plan, as it seems. So this is like a human limitation. So translation here is in a way a little bit against God's will, either we like it or not. But also translation is a way for you to earn your salvation, as it seems, because translating the Bible is also a way for you to earn your citizenship in the kingdom, as it seems, and the scripture reveal, and that it's important for the message to be spread, but not all messages, but the message of the kingdom. And we need to have a discussion on this philosophical aspect and religious matters. So we'll be discussing this tomorrow early. It's already 11:51. I don't want to go into that because I'm going to run short of time. I'm only left like 7 minutes or so. So I don't want to go into all of that immediately, because this is a little bit lengthy and deserves our attention. So I'm gonna make a parenthesis here and let you know once more that I am receiving your work, your segmentation practices. I've been receiving some of those. I appreciate what you're sending me. I need that also. Don't forget to send it. And on Wednesday, we're going to post some more work, right? This is coming, I told you. And that involves estrategias de traducción, the Brinton White Ortiz and Cruz book. I'm going to be posting over there some work for you to do concerning that, along with the PowerPoint material that we've been developing. All that is going to add up to some assessment of summative nature that we need here to justify what we're doing here during these hours. Remember, I don't want to overwhelm anybody, but in reality, I should be appointing work every day. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that to ourselves, because that'll be, counterproductive. Pedagogical, andragogical approaches do not work that way. So by Wednesday, I'm going to be posting new work, and I just told you what that's going to be. Two different things. Try to not to have so much work on your back, because that'll be probably a problem. Too much work is going to, probably get you confused. We have abandoned Remiatics material for a while, but we're going to go back to it. Okay, so don't think we're not following that. We're going to continue over there. So, okay, that's all I think for the meantime. I don't know if our organizers have some comments, final comments for the day.
Okay, well, the final comments would be, essentially, to reinforce what you were mentioning of keeping up with the work, not leaving everything for last minute. It can definitely turn overwhelming if we do so. Besides that, I wanted to thank you for, making this certificate program very interesting, in that, you're providing us with hands-on exercises, historical information that we probably we're not familiar with. And in addition to that, the idea of sparking our interests into other type of translation works. In other words, like literary work, which is an area that is clearly growing, and it's definitely there's a need for it. Also, I would like to thank all the participants for being involved with this today's session. We look forward to seeing you in the upcoming sessions, meaning tomorrow, the rest of the week. And I don't know if Professor Marisol wants to make any final comments.
Well, I would just like to say thank you to Professor Rafael Cardenas
Mhm.
for this knowledge.
Mhm.
I think that when we finish this certificate course, we're going to feel more knowledgeable, and that we have learned a lot of information about translation, its history, its techniques, how to go about different types of translations, and well, you name it. Thank you for such a fine trip.
Mhm.
Well,
Right.
and for the rest, thank you for being here today, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a nice day. God bless you.
Have a good one. We'll see you tomorrow then. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.